So for the most part, every amp has its own personality. When I started looking into buying amps back when I started playing gigs, the only amps that I had a lot of experience with were the ones that were wildly available at school, which were Hot Rod Deluxes and Hot Rod DeVilles. My friends and I could never really agree on these amps. Some people thought they were great, some people thought the opposite, some people thought the overdrive was great, some people thought the opposite. The only thing that we could really agree on is that it was a pretty unforgiving amp if you didn't play with confidence. So when I was looking to buy an amp, quite honestly, I didn't know what I was looking for. After a while, I settled on a Tweed Blues Junior because while starting to gig a lot, I wanted something that was loud enough to gig with and something that was small enough to gig with, aka small enough to fit in a car with a bunch of other equipment. It sounded really good, although I could hear pretty quickly that this amp sounded much different than all of the amps that I knew and loved from my favorite guitarists. Fast forward a couple years and I'm in New York City, land of venues that generally have house amps. Now I'm plugging into a Magnatone, a Vox, a Hot Rod Deluxe, 65 Reissue Deluxe, Twin Reverb, Half Stack, Marshall, and my clean tones are changing every time I gig. This required a certain amount of flexibility when recording or playing live because I just had to own whatever sound was coming out of whatever amp as my own, as if I had dialed it in on purpose. Thanks to this situation though, I got a lot of experience with a lot of different amps and started to develop my own preferences and would look forward to playing the venues that had the amps I preferred. Fast forward and I'm in LA, aka Bring Your Own Ampville, and I'm realizing for some of the louder sets I'm playing that the Blues Junior really isn't giving me a big enough sound. A friend offered a deal on a 65 Reissue Deluxe and that amp did not disappoint. I realized the kind of personality that the 65 Reissue brought versus the Hot Rod, as well as the series of limitations that came with that added personality. As far as a real amp plus pedal board rig goes, this is my favorite era in my playing history. Even then, every now and again, I would borrow a friend's Mesa Subway Rocket or something and think, wow, that sounds really nice. Look up the price of that and other boutique amps and go, wow, I'm really happy with where I'm at. Thanks though. Fast forward again and I'm messing around with amp modelers because they're easier to transport, they're less maintenance, and they sound really good. Initially when I got a modeler, I thought, well, I have this Deluxe, I have these pedals, let me model a Deluxe and these pedals. It was an innocent newbie mistake, not really using my amp modeler at the time, the Fractal AX8, for all that it could do. After realizing what I was accidentally glossing over, I've gotten such a good sense of many different kinds of amps and even different amps from one company. I played along with a track using one guitar on the same pickup so you could hear the kind of personality change that happens when the only thing changing is the amp. Let's check it out. So if you're like me at the beginning of this story and are looking around for a real amp, take the time to consider all of the options in your price range. In some instances, it'll dictate what kind of mood or personality you bring to your live shows and recordings. And if you're like me now and use a digital amp, whether it be from Fractal, Line 6, Kemper, whatever, it's really nice to take the time to really understand the personalities of different amps and all that they can bring to different recordings and live shows. You might even find that different guitars in your guitar collection prefer different amps. To me at least, messing around with that stuff is a lot of fun. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.